Today, we're going to jump right in and break down the core ideas of a really pivotal sermon by Reverend Sun Myung Moon from back in 1976. We're going to explore its vision of this huge cosmic struggle, a path to human perfection, and a mission to change the world that stretches all the way from Washington to Moscow.
Right out of the gate, the sermon hits you with this incredible line. I mean, wow, this isn't just a hook. It's setting up the entire theological problem we're going to be talking about, a universe where even God is waiting for a reason to feel true gratitude.
So what's the deal with this problem? Well, according to the sermon, the original plan for creation, a world of happiness and blessing, was just completely thrown off track by the fall of Adam and Eve. That one event is seen as the reason perfection has been impossible. And if you don't have perfection, you can't have genuine gratitude. Not for us, and not even for God.
But the text doesn't just leave us with the problem, it lays out a solution, a kind of roadmap. It's a four-step journey to get back to that ideal state. You've got to start with a battle. You have to win on every single level. Then you reach perfection, and only then, finally, can you get to that place of true gratitude.
Okay, so this is where this massive cosmic battle gets really personal. This isn't some abstract fight happening out there in the heavens. No, the sermon presents this as a conflict that is happening inside every single one of us.
So, if this whole battle is internal, then the most important question has to be, how do you know which side you're even on? What's the one thing that decides if you're in the camp of good or the camp of evil?
The answer, according to the sermon, is all about the words we listen to and the words we speak. The idea is that we're constantly being bombarded by these four different voices, and our alignment, which side we're on, is all determined by which ones we choose to follow.
And here's where it gets really tricky. The sermon doesn't paint God's truth as something that's easy or pleasant. It's described as bitter, painful, something that pushes you towards sacrifice. But Satan's influence, that's described as sweet lies, super tempting and really easy to swallow.
This all leads to an idea of radical personal responsibility. The sermon is basically saying that heaven and hell aren't just far-off places. The actual boundary line runs directly through you, and only you, decide which side of that line you're going to stand on.
So with the stakes being that high, how in the world are you supposed to navigate this internal battlefield? Well, the sermon offers what it calls a single, simple formula for judgment.
This is it. This is the core principle that's supposed to cut through all the noise and complexity. The text says your ultimate fate, where you end up, all comes down to one single, simple test.
And here's what it is. It's all about your motivation. An act is good if it's done for the public good, for other people, if it's unselfish. And an act is evil if it's self-centered, done for your own personal gain. So it's not about the act itself, but the why behind it.
Now, to make this really concrete, the sermon uses an example that would have been on everyone's mind at the time, Richard Nixon. His public service is framed as unselfish work for the greater good, but the Watergate crisis is presented as the result of self-centered decisions that basically canceled out all that good work. Now, this idea of unselfishness is taken to a pretty provocative place. The sermon actually explores how even concepts we find really troubling, like enslavement, can be reframed when the motivation is pure.
Yet, the sermon directly takes on the accusation that its followers are being enslaved. But instead of just denying it, it sort of recontextualizes it. So what could possibly justify using language like that?
Well, the text argues that we already accept this kind of total dedication in other parts of our lives. A child's selfless service to their parents, or a patriot's willingness to die for their country, a saint's absolute devotion to God. These are all presented as noble forms of slavery to a higher, unselfish cause.
And the ultimate role model for this entire principle, according to the sermon, is Jesus himself. He is presented as the perfect embodiment of this idea, literally becoming a slave to a divine, unselfish mission for all of humankind.
So this is a really crucial point. This individual principle of unselfish service isn't just for your own personal salvation. It's supposed to be the engine for a massive collective mission to change the entire world.
And that mission is laid out with just incredible ambition. Remember, this sermon was given at the height of the Cold War. It frames a recent rally in Washington as a key victory for God. But that was just the beginning. The next target? Moscow. The goal was a direct, head-on confrontation with what it calls godless communism, to ultimately establish the kingdom of God right here on earth.
The text is very open about the fact that this is a David and Goliath struggle. It says, we are only a handful of people,
But the argument is that their true power doesn't come from numbers or military might, it comes directly from God, which makes them stronger than any worldly force.
To really hammer home the level of commitment required, the sermon makes this pretty startling claim, that 80% of soldiers in history failed spiritually because they were afraid to die. The implication is that this new spiritual army has to be completely different, that they have to conquer that fear entirely.
I mean, the stakes just could not be any higher. The sermon literally places the entire destiny of the cosmos squarely on the shoulders of its followers. Their personal victory over selfishness is tied directly to the fate of the whole world.
The mindset that's required is a complete flip of our natural instincts. As the sermon lays it out, God comes first, mankind comes first, the world comes first. Your own needs, your own self, you always have to come last.
And that brings us right back to where we started, full circle. The sermon ends by connecting this huge global mission back to that initial painful problem. That day of gratitude God is waiting for, it can only happen after this battle is won, after perfection is finally achieved through selfless action. So we'll end on this question. The entire moral framework we've just looked at rests on this one idea of unselfishness being the ultimate good. But as the sermon's own controversial examples show, the line between a selfless act for the greater good and a harmful one can get pretty blurry. It leaves you wondering who gets to be the one to define what's truly unselfish.